Good morning. The reading this morning is taken from Luke chapter 6, verses 27 to 38. In the church Bibles, it is on page 1034. But I tell you, you who hear me, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who ill-treat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop him from taking your tunic. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Here endeth the lesson. God praise his word. Amen.
Oh, I thought I'd get a lot more sympathy than that. I'll tell you why I haven't had breakfast, and I'm amazed at this. Coincidence isn't the right word, this overlap. Yesterday evening, I had a meal cooked by 3 Eritrean refugees. Right? I was away on a residential weekend. I'm trustee of a charity in Southend, which is linked with Church from Scratch, which is a home mission plant in Southend. The only reason I'm involved is because I'm involved in their charity shop work, and they set up charity shops in order to reach vulnerable people in the community. And refugees, whether they come over on boats or they come over different ways, they are not allowed to work. They, in this case, there's a big hotel in Southend that's full of refugees, and one of the things they can do is come and work in our shops. And the most recent batch of refugees, the 3 who've come to work with us, are Eritrean Christians. Eritrea is the 5th country on the list of the World Watch List, which I spoke to you about last year. And this year's World Watch List has just been published, and copies are coming here very soon. It is the 5th most dangerous country in the world to be a Christian. And these ladies have had to flee. They are believers, and they not only work in one of our shops on a Wednesday, they cook a meal every week for all the other volunteers. And we spread tables out in the shop. I'm talking as if I'm there, but I have been a few times. And in the middle of the day, with the shop open to the public walk in, and there are all these motley crew around tables eating the food of whatever nationality has been cooking. And the meal last night was amazing. It was little bits of lamb, and it was chicken drumsticks, and it was in some kind of broth. And when it was served to the tables, there was immediately a reaction from several people. I can't eat that. It's probably got chili in it. Well, I want us to think in a moment about how prejudiced we can be. You're fortunate this morning because I'm not doing the children's talk. The last few times I've done the children's talk, I brought a lump of Norwegian cheese that my daughter's partner gave me for Christmas. He was very brave, and I kept it unopened until I took it to a church and told them what it was, and it looks a yellow ochre colour. It doesn't look like cheese at all. And I opened it in front of them, and I then cut it up and passed it round and got them all to try it. And there were people in there who wouldn't try it. And there were other people who just wanted to smell it before they would try it. Why am I talking to you about this? We have lots of prejudice. The teachings of Christ challenge all sorts of prejudices. And it's teachings like those that Stuart read to us from Luke chapter 6 that are probably the most well-known teachings of Jesus outside the Christian church. But sadly, we as Christians so often don't live up to them. If you've been following Roots and Shoots, you'll have heard this quote already. Mahatma Gandhi shares in his autobiography that in his student days in England, he was deeply touched by reading the Gospels and seriously considered becoming a convert to Christianity, which seemed to offer a real solution to the caste system that divided the people of India. One Sunday, he attended church services and decided to ask the minister for enlightenment on salvation and other doctrines. But when Gandhi entered the sanctuary, the ushers refused to give him a seat and suggested that he go elsewhere to worship with his own people. He left and never came back. If Christians have caste differences too, he said to himself, I might as well remain a Hindu. I did take a look because he'd come over to England to study law, and I thought, I wonder if it was a church in Cambridge. Breathe a sigh of relief, it was in London. But hang on, how would he have been met? This was obviously some years ago. The title I've been given is Discipleship, a Call to Sacrificial Living. Sacrifice means giving something up. And when we look at the teachings that are here in this passage, it challenges a lot of things that we need to let go of. Love your enemies. I haven't counted how many times Jesus told us to love. Love your enemies. We remember that, don't we? What else did he say? Love one another, yes. And love your neighbor. What example did he give of loving your neighbor? The Good Samaritan. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? The horror that parable would have struck in the minds of the people who were listening to him. It's a cultural horror where they, the Jews as a nation, absolutely loathed the Samaritans, and there were youngsters in the land who may never have seen a Samaritan and had almost come away with the impression that they possibly had two heads or always carried swords and were ready to kill them, because culturally Samaritans were no-nos. If a Jew wanted to go to the north of the land, they would go round Samaria. They wouldn't go through it, because they felt that the Samaritans were apostate Jews. We've looked at that in Roots and Shoots as to why that is. And Jesus chooses a Samaritan as an example of loving your neighbour, not because somebody loves a Samaritan, because a Samaritan shows love to the injured man. And that's what was radical about it. Everybody would have expected that it would be Jews who were the examples of love. It would be somebody Jewish who would care for the man. But no, the Jewish people, the religious people, had gone by on the other side of the road, and a Samaritan, somebody they hated, was able to show love. And Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. Are we any good at that? I'd love to tell you about a church meeting I got asked to chair between two churches. And they were talking about possibly working together. I'm not going to go into any details, but there were tears, there were people walking out, there was all sorts of accusations made from one to another. And at the time, this passage was already on my mind about loving one another. There wasn't much love shown in that room, and we had to bring the meeting to an end and pray together. No, I prayed that the Lord would show us the way forward. How do I love my enemy? If we look at verses 32 to 36, we've got some examples of what we could do. It talks about if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend from those to whom you expect or from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full. What Jesus is saying is, to love your enemies, you need to do something different. So often what we think of as loving our enemies and loving other people is something that we can manage because it's very passive. We don't want to cause them hurt. We don't want to cause them harm. But Jesus is saying, don't just sit there. Do something. Be proactive to your enemies. Verse 35, love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Roots and Shoots this week, we're into Acts chapter 12. We've already looked at the martyrdom of Stephen, the first Christian to lose his life for his faith. In Acts chapter 12, we just have a very brief comment that James, the apostle, becomes the first apostle to be martyred. One of the earliest of the Christian historians is Clement of Alexandria. And I've got to unfold this piece in order to read the quote to you. This is what Clement wrote. The first known Christian scholar, Clement of Alexandria, has left us a moving postscript on the death of James. The man whose denunciation had led to James's arrest was so impressed by James's testimony to Christ before Herod that he himself became a Christian, with the result that he was led away to execution along with James. Clement writes, on the way he asked James for forgiveness. James looked at him for a moment and said, "Peace be to you," and kissed him. So both were beheaded at the same time. Love your enemies means doing something. And it means showing the love of Christ. If we look at verse 31, we've got probably one of the most well-known teachings of Christ: do unto others as you would have them do to you. And I've heard people tell me that this is not original. that other faiths around the world have the same thing. We call it the Golden Rule. So I've done a bit of research. Confucius has something similar. He was writing between 551 and 479 BC. See if you can spot the difference. What you do not wish for yourself, do not do to others. Is that the same as what Jesus said? The Sanskrit tradition has something very similar to Confucius. And if you Google it or look on Wikipedia, there's I think they've got at least 13 different examples. But Jesus changes the rules. Did you spot the difference? That says, do not do to others what you don't want them to do to yourself. Jesus says, do to others what you would have them do to yourself. You can obey the first sitting exactly where you are. You don't need to move. You don't need to think. All the while you're here, you're not doing unto others what you would not want them to do to you. But I suggest you cannot obey what Jesus taught by sitting still and doing nothing. Do to others is proactive. These Eritrean ladies, they don't have very good English, but we can just about get to talk to them and understand what they want us to know. I thought, if I was in their position, how would I want people to help me? And actually, over this weekend, we were in a residential centre in Tunbridge, and we had a lot of vulnerable people with us, and we decided to have a jigsaw puzzle competition. And we got two people who were very good at jigsaw puzzles sitting side by side at a table, and we sealed the jigsaw puzzle up, and we got them to open it and to start to do this jigsaw puzzle to see how quickly they could do it. But as they were working, various people in the room came and interfered with what was going on. So somebody came and stood behind one of them and started telling them that they were useless at jigsaw puzzles. And this just went on and on and on through the whole skit. Then somebody else came, opened another jigsaw puzzle box and tipped those pieces over the pieces they were trying to do. I can see some people wincing already. And then somebody discovered that if you look on Google, there are rules for jigsaw competitions, international rules. Do you know those rules say that you cannot open the box with a pair of scissors? How bizarre is that? And I was sitting there watching, and I said to Peter, who read this rule, I said, "You're making that up." "No, these are the official." I said, "No, they're not. That wouldn't be a rule in a jigsaw puzzle competition." I was wrong. Right? And I was getting wound up. And when we'd finished, we sat round in small groups. And we sat round in a big group, first of all, and said, "How did that feel?" And it was chaos, and we were all getting wound up and frustrated, partly on behalf of those who were struggling, and partly because it was triggering things for us. And then Peter said, "Right, how did that make some of you feel?" And people shared how actually a lot of the time that was how they feel just with life. And they find it difficult to cope. And we tried to get an understanding of what it feels like to be them in order to better help them. We need to be proactive. How would I want people to treat me? I would want people to try and understand me, not to condemn me, not to just write me off and say, "Oh, I can't get to know that person," or "I just don't want to be bothered." Third thing it leads to is verse 37, where Jesus says, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you." That's how I would like to be treated, and therefore that's how I need to treat other people. This is the teaching of Jesus. But in order to do it, in order to live up to that, we have to make sacrifices. Let me give you 3 things. And if you were expecting me to say you need to give up money, you need to give up time, you need to give up food for fasting and things like this, no. Here we go. What must we sacrifice in order to live like Christ? We must sacrifice our priorities. We must say, Lord, and remember what the word Lord means, what would you have me to do? How can I love others? How can I love my enemies? How can I understand the pressures and problems that they face and help them and show the love of Christ to them? Priorities. Number 2, we need to sacrifice our perspective. We need to remember, and occasionally we get glimpses of this, but it's hard. We need to remember that we are looking at other people and we're looking at circumstances around us from a perspective which has been filtered by all sorts of experiences and teachings, and as a result, lots of prejudices. We need to ask God to help us to understand things from His point of view and to love like He loved, not like how we think we should love. So we must sacrifice our priorities, our perspective. Can you give me a third P? How about our pride? Yeah? Where we want to do things for the kudos that we get, for our own benefit. Somebody has tried to argue that nobody can ever do anything truly altruistic, because even that feeling of, oh, I've done something good, can be a motive, can be a wrong motive for doing something. We need to be ready to sacrifice our pride and live for Christ. Let me leave you with a couple of quotes. 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 16. This is a verse taken out of context, but if you read the context, you'll see more about it. It says, "It is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people." In the context, it's talking about living under different, difficult human authorities and what our attitude should be towards those around us. But if we live in God's will, we're doing good. And the last one, in Romans chapter 12. "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." Verse 17, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'It is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord.' On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." I've been reading, as I've been studying through Acts, a commentary by a Sri Lankan Christian leader, written just before the turn of the century, and it comes from a very different cultural background, so it's really interesting to read his insights. Talking about living as a Christian, he says the seriousness of this problem surfaces in the growth of self-effort. People of these religions object that Christianity, with its free offer of forgiveness for sins through grace, opens the door for irresponsible living. This is one of the most common criticisms made against Christianity by Buddhists in Sri Lanka. In answer, we say that God not only forgives us, but he also gives us the strength to overcome sin. But if they accept that argument, they will examine the lives of Christians to see whether it really works. And if they do not see holiness in Christians, they will accuse us of making fraudulent claims. How's that going for you? We're going to focus our thoughts now on Jesus and the sacrifice he made for us as we sing our next hymn. Thank you.